Pregame.tv, Brady Kannon, Fire the Cannon plays. Steve Fezzik. We're going to be talking some golf, but most of all, we're going to be talking some football. We're talking right now on the Super Bowl. Where is the money going? Right before we went on air, Brady was about to make a comment on something. Was it Super Bowl related?
Oh, absolutely.
Let's hear it.
I'm fired up. You know, we're in the week. You know, it's always that bye week last week where you're kind of sitting in no man's land. And now here we are. The radio shows have started, and we're ready to talk about it.
Yeah, you know what? I'm fired up. But I have to say, this is a young man's game. So I'm running around getting the props a couple days late. I suck beyond belief. I'm picking them up at different places. I'm walking up and I'm like, oh, I see Seattle is plus. These are all true props because I'm going through. I can go through them in 20 seconds. You know, I don't know why they pay all these consultants to put up the wrong numbers and they don't pay me. I always say that. Why don't they hire me? Because
you're talking about wanting to get hired for an NFL squad as well, managing the clock down. You know, when you should kick a field goal, when you should go for it on fourth down.
I will say within 3 weeks, Jim Caldwell will lose a game, or he should lose a game with some
Here's
bad
another
management.
topic we can talk about.
Oh, the Detroit Lions are
one of the worst offenses in the NFL, Baltimore Ravens, and you hire their offensive coordinator. I don't get it.
Well, he did manage to get to a Super Bowl.
Yeah.
And with Peyton Manning,
he took over for Cam Cameron.
And then Peyton Manning, 10-6, with the only football team, I think, when Manning was healthy, that they ever won 10-6. He threw all those interceptions that year. And then 2-14 without Peyton Manning.
And I think the Dallas Cowboys actually created a new position today. They hired Scott Linehan away from the Lions, and apparently he's going to be their passing game coordinator.
What they should hire is Fezzik to tell them when to take timeouts. Here's the bottom line. I'm walking around, and I'm not like checking everything. I'm going like this through 50 props. So I'm like, I say I can get Seattle plus 1.5 in the second half. They put plus second half.
Okay.
Walk up to a place. Oh, now it's minus $1.30. I'm like, oh, okay. Then we talked about the Denver punter. As far as we're talking about where the money's going and on some things, they put up the dumbest prop ever. One of these places. It's like one of those. I used to work as a vice president for an insurance company, and my boss's boss, once a year, he would call down the president of the company, and he would say, Steve, I saw that memo you had put on the Denver punter, longest field goal, 57.5 yards. All right? Did you even read?
Longest punt, 57.
Longest punt, 57.5 yards. He said, did you even read that the game's not going to be in Denver this week? He might not be kicking it like he normally does. They took the season-long averages and came and landed on 57.5. And, of course, now I ask what it is, and I'm all ready to lay $1.50, under 57. I know it's 49.5, and I'm like.
Somebody caught it.
Someone caught it and bet it 6 times.
Right.
And they'll get 6 winning tickets out of it. And
57.5 yards.
So now I got to kick back and hope somebody just airmails one over the kick returner's head, and the Colquitt goes nuts on one bid. So
yeah, you could get that bounce.
Stroink, the artificial turf bounce. Apparently there won't be ice. But as far as where the money's going, it's interesting because the money's been on the under. Let's talk about the
sure.
It's down to 47. And I told David Gleason this morning. I said, I've been part of betting groups, and if you like the under, I really think the worst bet you can make is under 47 because there's so many good props to play under.
Right.
Super Bowls are lower scoring early in the game. You could play, you could play derivatives first half under. Why would you play game under? Especially, I gotta feel money's going to come on the over when the weather report gets out that it's improving.
Yeah, and now let me ask you this. 48 was pretty much the opener as the total, I believe, 48. Do you think betting under 48 is a bad play?
I think it's okay.
Yeah.
I think, it was better to bet under 24 because the second half is always a heavy favorite against the first half for points scored.
Right.
And by the way, I did see a prop out there in a major book today. I bet this. It really wasn't widely available. For each team, will they be higher scoring second half versus first half? And I only had to lay $1.15, so I took the second half.
Great price.
Yeah, because so why play under 48 when you can play under 24 would be my take. But you're beating the market, which I like. But then again, whatever the number closes in faraway places, Vegas is going to be a point higher. We saw that in the Green Bay-Pittsburgh Super Bowl where people were cutting in line to bet Brett Favre, to bet Aaron Rodgers under 44.5, and it got knocked down to 44. And Vegas was 45, 45.5. And, of course, it soared over, as so many of these NFL games do. You got to question the sharp square thing.
Right, which we've talked about.
Boy, the sharps look square on a lot of these totals where they're like 53% of the NFL games this year went over.
I know. Amazing. And speaking of the total, you mentioned the money going towards the under. We have another interconference game here, obviously, and about 76% of those went over the total this year.
It was amazing. At one point, it was 33-11, and a lot of people jumped on board late, but it really didn't matter. They went ahead and still got there.
And I don't know. I certainly don't think you can put it in the same category as what took place in the regular season this week. It's a different dynamic. But what are your thoughts there? I mean, does it hold the same weight as that interconference dynamic we saw earlier in the year?
I don't think it does, but I think you don't completely ignore it either.
Right.
And I do think that we're going to see money. If you like the over, I think that the over 47 is good. We're going to talk about live wager. I think there's a better way, certainly, to get at the over. One thing I wanted to talk about in terms of the props and following the money, I'm going to try to make a case for when to follow the money and when not to follow the money. Everyone is going to bet Peyton Manning to go over 288.5 passing yards. So when he goes up to, you go up to your local book and it's over 288.5 minus 150 or over 296, and you say, oh, they're betting the over. The sharps are betting the over. No, the sharps are not betting the over. The public is betting the over. Like, that would be an example of one where I don't think you should follow it at all. Whereas if you walk up and there's a prop on, say, Turbin, how many carries is he going to get? A backup running back.
Sure.
And he's
or a second, third string tight end.
Right. So I'll use Turbin like he was at 3.5 for a number of, he was actually 4 at one place, and now he's down to 3 for a number of carries. And like, that's an example of the public isn't betting that. That every bet that's going against Turbin,
I would just off the top of my head, thinking back on memory, watching these games, he's had over 3 carries in every playoff game so far. 2 and 3, only 2 and 3. Really?
Yeah.
God, I would have guessed.
The reason is he's got like 8 or 9 towards the end of the year. You're thinking about the last 2 weeks of the season when Lynch they're giving a little blow to and trying to keep his legs fresh. But since the playoffs started, he had 2 carries against.
I still think it's a good play over that.
I don't think it's a good play.
No, but you're saying.
I'm saying all the money is coming against Turbin. They're all betting against him.
But you're saying that's public or sharp?
The public doesn't know who Turbin is.
Exactly.
It's all sharp money. So because of that, I think Turbin's more likely to wear a turban than to wear a helmet during the game. And I think also, like, in terms of, let's face it, they had a relatively easy game against New Orleans. They did have a big lead. If they were going to give Turbin any minutes, they would have given him in that game.
Right,
and so I know they gave him like 2 carries and 3 carries, but he was ineffective also. He's averaging 3 yards a carry. So it's not like he's shown anything. It's like the exact opposite last year. One of my biggest prop bets was on Bernard Pierce.
Yeah.
Because Ray Rice couldn't like run through a paper bag.
Right.
At the end of the year, he'd really lost his explosiveness, except when he played the Chargers and he was able to pick up a 4th and 29 with 14 defenders.
We all remember that.
All over. And so I played Pierce over 5.5 carries, and that number just went nuts. People kept betting over, but I really think that's an example where you don't even have to know who Pierce or Turbin is. If you can just look and see the money going on a backup running back. On
an under the radar play.
The only guy that's going to be betting that are people that are doing this for a living.
Sure.
Right now.
Yep, absolutely.
And so I actually say one of the easiest ways to win is like you go to the LVH when they first open up and write the opening number, and then the second that you see a movement, the first bet, and it goes from minus 110 to minus 120, then just go and bet it again.
Right.
Because that's the right side. Now, we got to be careful because you are going to get to situations later in the week where someone's going to have one guy, longest reception 11 yards, and somewhere else it's 8.5, and they're just playing for middles. So that's not going to be nearly as effective, to coattail someone who's just playing for a middle.
Yeah, and I think that's a common philosophy, too, on the more high-profile players like a Peyton Manning or a Russell Wilson or a Marshawn Lynch. The sharps are in there early, and they're taking the overs across the board on those players, and then they're coming in on game day an hour before the game and playing the under because the public has stepped in and jacked that total up to 10 yards further than it was on opening night.
A lot of people will just take the best number they can get on Manning right now and play him over and know they can get rid of it, at a profitable price. I mean, now that the weather's going to be good, who's going to play Manning under? So, so if I can, I'm going to go ahead and make this a best bet on as far as following the money.
Let's hear it.
Where is the money going in the Super Bowl, and where do we follow it? Well, we got to take the public bets like the side, the total, the Manning yards, in the garbage can, irrelevant. I mean, it's relevant where it's going, but you're not going to be able to find a winner. Find the more obscure props out there. How many penalties are going to be in the game? How many yards is Julius Thomas going to gain? How many yards is Turbin going to pick up? The more obscure a player, the more obscure the prop is, the more likely it is if people are betting that there'll be more goals in the Beantown hockey college. There's a prop up at Leroy's on this. Actually, William Hill. They said, will there be more goals in the what's the Beantown hockey thing called? With Boston College, and they have 4 collegiate teams playing. Beantown weekend hockey, I can't even name the teams, versus the number of penalties in the game. Great prop. They have props on like Ronaldo, how many goals he's going to score versus how many fumbles are going to be lost in the game. The bottom line is just look at where the money's going on crazy props like that, because right now the only one betting them are the pros. Those are the ones where you can look where it's going. Then you can go do your research and see if you agree with it. I think you're going to find some really nice bets if you just follow the money on the obscure stuff.
Cool. Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. And that's really what I look for, too. Like, I didn't take a look at the Manning or the Lynch or anything like that. And it kind of relates to me where I look at who's going to score the first touchdown. I'm not going to bet a Lynch or a Wes Welker or something. I want the third string tight end that they might figure into their game plan.
I just want to book all those.
Oh, yeah.
Because the house edge is too big.
I agree with you. Just making a point here that I think that the more under the radar is probably where you can find more advantage.
Right. I remember my first experience with people betting that was that there was a Denver Super Bowl, the one where they were down 28-3 at halftime, and a guy had a $100 ticket on Sammy Winder to score the first touchdown for Denver, the running back. He used to do the stomp dance when he would do the touchdown. And so he goes, I can't believe I blew a buck on this guy. I looked at the odds, and he was 5-1.
Oh.
I think it should be more like Denver. The entire team should have been 5-1 to score the first touchdown. So I lost big on that Super Bowl. I had the Broncos. A lot of fun talking about where the money's going, what to follow, what not to follow. We're going to actually talk. We've been talking about betting before the game, what to get down on. You stay with us. We're going to tell you how to bet after the game starts, live wagering. Stay with us. Pregame.tv.